All right. This is Michael Manjos, Chairman, Board of Finance. Good evening. It is Thursday, June 18th, 6:01, and we're going to call to order the Board of Finance meeting. As soon as I bring my desk up so I can stand up and do this. Please allow me to confirm those members, staff, and anticipated participants can hear me. I will also ask the moderator to confirm the digital identity of each of the aforementioned participants. Affirmative identification. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John Oshevsky.
Here.
Craig Hirsch. I don't see Craig there. Steve Kirsch.
Here.
Dane Kraszemski.
Here.
Rebecca O'Donnell.
Here.
Beautiful. All right. We also have First Selectman Ken Kellogg.
Here.
Director of Finance Ron Badowski.
Here.
And Heidi Mead.
Here.
Terrific. I think that's all we have. I hereby declare we have a quorum and call this meeting to order. A copy of the agenda and any related materials have been posted to and can be found on the town's website, www.monroect.org, for public inspection. This is a public meeting is being conducted remotely in compliance with Section 1 of Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B, dated March 14, 2020, using GoToMeeting electronic conference technology. Using this technology, the public shall participate in real time in this meeting via computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone using the access information set forth on the meeting agenda. Please be advised that each meeting has a unique participation information, so please be sure that you have accessed the correct meeting. Notice is hereby given that only 250 participants may access this remote electronic public meeting at any one time. Access to this meeting using this technology is granted solely by the technology provider on a first access basis and is not controlled by the town of Monroe. While it is anticipated that we will not exceed the participation limit for this meeting, should it appear we are approaching said limit so that any member of the public is denied access to this meeting, I, as chairman, reserve the right to adjourn and continue the meeting at a later date using technology appropriate to ensure all members of the public may participate. Please take notice of the following regarding this remote electronic public meeting. 1, this meeting is conducted in real time. This meeting is open to the public, and any member of the public may listen to or view this meeting anonymously. This meeting is being recorded. While we ask that you mute your microphones unless recognized to speak, that anything you say, do, or display on your screen may become part of the recording. That the recording shall be posted to the town's website within 7 days. That the recording shall be made available to the public within a reasonable time. This meeting shall follow the following standard parliamentary procedures. However, I ask participants to follow these special rules. In addition, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise at any time you're not speaking. Prior to speaking on each occasion, each speaker should clearly state their name and title for the record. The use of the chat feature is prohibited and will not be considered during this meeting if in use. As set forth on this agenda, this meeting, doesn't look like we have public participation on the agenda here. Heidi, am I missing? I think we got a habit of our budget meetings. We might want to add that in.
Yeah, there's no public participation.
Got it. Okay. All right. Then I think we're ready to go.
Should we add, Mike? Should we add public participation?
You could certainly make a motion thereof. It's a regular meeting, so we can add to the agenda with a motion.
Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance. I move that we add a public participation following item number 2, the review of the minutes and voting records.
Do we have a second?
Oshevsky. Yeah, John Oshevsky, Vice Chair, second.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Steve?
Aye.
Beautiful. John?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Dane?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Perfect. So we'll add that into the agenda after we review the minutes. to review the minutes and voting record of May 14th, 19th, and June 20th. Want to make a motion?
Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance. I move to accept the minutes and voting records for May 14th, 2020, May 19th, 2020, and June 2nd, 2020.
And we have a second?
Rebecca O'Donnell, second.
Perfect. Any discussion? Hearing none. Steve Kirsch?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Terrific. All right. Let's throw in public participation here. Anybody from the public like to speak? Give everybody one more chance. Anybody from the public can unmute yourself and. All right, hearing none. Ken, you're up.
Thanks, Mike. Ken Keller for Selectmen with a quick report. Just a few things I wanted to hit on. One, a report that I gave to the town council at their last meeting, but I wanted to make sure the Board of Finance was informed as well. Just to reiterate, I know that I said before that we've been tracking COVID-19 related expenses pretty diligently. I want to thank everyone on the team who's been working on that. Most importantly, Heidi, who has done the most of the heavy lifting in that regard. So thanks to her. I want to let you know where we stand at this point. This is as of probably about a week and a half ago. We had roughly $46,000 between incurred and encumbered expenses that kind of go towards a whole wide variety of different COVID-19 hazard mitigation efforts. We have, as you know, we're eligible for. There's a lot of different funding sources that are out there. A few of them that we are immediately able to take advantage of. One is through the state health department. They have a grant for a very specific, narrowly defined set of health department expenses. We've been able to get about 10% of those expenses already reimbursed directly at 100% through that grant. After that, there are some other funding sources that are always being evaluated, but we know that our next source, if we don't find other buckets that are appropriate, will be FEMA. Our emergency management director and Ron and Heidi have been very engaged with FEMA representatives. I've been on a couple of those calls. It seems to be a refreshingly easier, I say that in quotes, process than has been a prior experience. It seems that they're trying to, make things a little bit more straightforward. Not that anything with the federal government, nothing is simple, right? But it'll be hopefully better than what I know that, like, for example, prior processes with like Superstorm Sandy were really hard. So this appears to be a little bit more straightforward. So that we would be eligible for 75% reimbursement of federally authorized expenses. Then after that, we are eligible. The state of Connecticut has, through the Federal CARES Act, set aside certain funds, and I've been advised that Monroe is currently authorized up to $86,000 and change, $86,427 to be exact, dollars. So that would be basically covering the remaining, whatever isn't funded fully through another source, or the remaining 25% of what isn't funded from FEMA. So the long and the short of it is we're comfortable at this point that we have a reasonable cushion to cover COVID expenses. But of course, that is an ongoing an ongoing effort. We'll keep you up to date if anything changes dramatically. Other items, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, Ken, I don't want to interrupt, but I had a question on that. So that's expenses to date, or does that include expenses that may be forthcoming?
That includes actual and encumbered to date. So no, I mean, there could certainly be ongoing expenses beyond that the longer this goes on. That said, there's ongoing conversations at the state level about expenses after after this fiscal year and in and through December, and we know that the state has appropriated more money towards municipalities under the CARES Act than municipalities have said they have exposure to at this point. So they've kind of left the window open for another round of funding beyond that 86. And then also I just want to note that separately, the Board of Ed has also been advised that they're eligible for 100 and is it 115, Ron, in that ballpark?
115, yes.
Okay. So that's yet another stream that the Board of Ed directly would utilize before any of their expenses would go to FEMA. So that's that. Any other questions on that? If not, I'll just touch on a couple.
Ken, this is Steve Kirsch, if I may. The Board of Ed 115, is that for this fiscal year? Does that carry into July 1 and beyond?
That's a great question, Steve. I'm not sure. Ron, do you know the answer to that? I don't know.
I don't know if it
my
was
assumption would be
typically year.
grants aren't limited to fiscal years. Typically a grant's just something you need to apply for and it doesn't get locked into a budget year. Not saying that this is the case, but that would be my assumption.
Yeah.
So we can certainly get a clarity on that, but that's typically the way the grant would work.
Yeah, I have not seen anything that it's specific to a fiscal year, because a lot of the costs on the Board of Ed side will probably
come
be
in the fall, right?
Yeah, they're probably yet to come.
Well,
the other thing is we haven't even gotten the application yet to fill out. I believe that's going to be available tomorrow. So.
All right, so moving on, I just wanted to update a couple other things. As you know, we've kind of got we've got this arrangement with the Board of Education in having the joint, kind of the shared oversight of finance. Thank you, Ron, and of course, the team on both sides that are also bearing added load as a result, Heidi included. So that MOU or MOA actually was originally crafted pre-COVID and was going to terminate at the end of, actually right at the beginning of July, and it contemplated evaluation of a permanent arrangement. Because of COVID, it has been completely impractical to conduct a thoughtful evaluation of that. There's just been so many other priorities. So I've spoken to both the chairman of the Board of Ed and the superintendent of schools, and I have prepared a simple, or I've actually asked the town attorney to prepare a very simple amendment to that MOA, which will extend it another 6 months while we continue to, be able to do that evaluation and move forward. And I know that the chairman of the Board of Ed will have to be bringing that to the Board of Ed as well. So that's that piece. And then I wanted to report while negotiations are continuing for other bargaining units, we did negotiate a wage freeze with the clerical union, which was brought to and approved by the town council at their last meeting. So that has been, that bargaining unit has been resolved. That's all I got. I know that I was going to mention that WMNR has presented their budget as they do every year, but I see Kurt is on the line, so I will let him discuss that. I know it's under your new business, so there's no need for me to get into that any further.
Very good. Thank you, sir. All right. Unfinished business. We have our 3-year budget model. I think, if anything, we certainly realize now the importance of this going forward. And again, now that we're done with budget season, I do want to start figuring out how we want to take this on. Might be our summer project, but one way or another, we got to figure out what would be involved, what are the ramifications, where do we, what can we draw from. Heidi, yeah, I'm talking to you. What the capacity and capabilities of our present system are to do a multiple year. I don't know if it's built into the system or not. You're nodding, so I'm assuming it is. So what I would recommend is maybe I'll touch base with you guys over the next couple of weeks, and we'll come up with a strategy for the next meeting going forward, because I do want to pick that up. And unless anybody has any other discussion on that, we can jump into new business. And that is WMNR. So I believe in our packet is the MNR budget. And when did you say Kurt's on the call?
Yeah, Mike, with your permission, Kurt Anderson, General
Please,
Manager.
Kurt Anderson.
And I'd love to have him present this.
Let's do it.
Kurt,
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
We got you perfectly. Welcome.
Great. I'm calling out on my phone because my laptop battery was dying.
There are always challenges these days.
Yeah, I'm in a parking lot of a hospital, but my friend's okay. It's just, I'm glad I could just connect with you guys virtually. So as you know, we're a special revenue fund, which means that the funds that are raised for WMNR stay with WMNR. Of course, they're invested. We have both a checking account and then a separate funds that are part of the town's money market account that we transfer over when we need more to cover the checking balance. I've been doing this for 38 years, and I never thought, what would happen had happened, and I know everyone else says the same thing. So I shouldn't really be overly dramatic, but I am extremely surprised that when we got an extra stimulus check in 2009, we got about a $9,000 check in 2010. And I thought, maybe we'll get the same thing out of the 75 million. But no, we got a $75,000 check, which fills the holes that we had. Yes, you'll see it listed in
there it is.
A third paragraph.
Nice.
The federal government usually gives public radio and TV 40 million, of which we get 84,000, and I have to spend 9,000 on an audit to get it. In this case, they were given 75 million. Instead of the big stations taking a lion's share, they spread it out far and wide. So the 75,000 puts us in good shape. That, of course, excess revenue over funds expenditures will not last forever, but it'll tide us over nicely. Our major fundraisers are fall, winter, spring. We had a one-day fundraiser, and we'll find out in fall how fundraising is in early October, and I'll know by late October whether I have to present a revised budget for the station, which I've done twice, once in 2009 and once about 15 years earlier, where I presented a revised budget mid-year. So we're fortunate that we're going to end on a good note. I do propose to run a little bit of a deficit for next year, but I'll still only be using part of the surplus up from this year. 11,000 of that deficit will be one-time tower maintenance costs involving the 300-foot tower at Stepney Elementary School. I did take a salary cut beginning July 1. The WMNR minimum wage will be $12 beginning July 1. And the max anybody's getting, myself and another person, will be $25 an hour. And it could be that we might need to make some reductions in hours or salary. Everyone's non-union, so I have flexibility. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that later, let's lead by example and start a little bit now. So that's why I did that. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
So, Kurt, this
No,
is Steve Kirsch.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Kurt, number one, thank you for the letter. The reports are always well detailed. I think you answered my first question. There's two of you that are at the highest rate that took a pay cut. Is that what I understand?
Sort of. There was the Jane Stadler, who's been operations director since 1991 and is retiring in July. I replaced her with an interim operations position at a lower hourly rate. And so the interim will be $25 an hour. My salary will be reduced to $25 an hour. So that'll be the new high rate. Technically, the retiring person, didn't take a pay cut, but the incoming person was already getting $25 an hour as a half-time, and now they'll be getting $25 an hour full-time.
Okay. Also, in your write-up, you talked about having to do repainting and guy wire tensioning. How often is that done? Is that like once every 5 years? Is that a period?
We try to do there's a color standard for making sure that the tower is physically visible during the daytime. We do it about every 5 years. We have the tower climb virtually every year to be inspected. They also change the light bulbs at the top. Better to change them ahead of time than in the middle of winter having to pay some crew a lot of money to do it. So the guy wire, the $5,800 tower painting is every 5 years. The guy wire retentioning, which is hopefully going to be 6, it could be as much as 16, but that's only done every 25 years. We just had new guy wires replaced 2 years ago. The existing guy wires were 30 years old, so it's not done that often.
Okay, and my last question, I noticed in your expenses, there's a computer support line, account 29751-15. I noticed you're budgeting just under 12,000 for next year. You had spent over 15 in the prior year. You're on track to spend 13 and a half. I'm just wondering, is something changing that you expect to spend less next year?
Yes, that line includes both physical computers, but generally we have our own IT guy. We don't bother the town, and we get a great guy who we pay next to nothing, and he really cares about the station. He has a full-time job elsewhere at University of New Haven, and he's a former Massac High School student. So the computers are dirt cheap. That actually, the reduction is because we're going to save a couple of $1,000 by no longer offering, right now we have an audio stream that's live. And for 2 or 3 years, we've been offering an extra service which allows you to listen to a previous stream in the week. Stuff's recorded and made available, and anybody can listen to it on demand up to a week later. And I'm going to cut that or switch to a much cheaper service And that's where that couple of $1,000s of cost savings is going to come from.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else have any questions for Kurt? Somebody want to make a motion to approve the budget?
Sure.
Steve
John
Kirk.
Ostrowski, Vice Chair. I beat you, Steve, this time. You can do it.
Yeah, that's fine, John. Absolutely.
John
Go for it.
Ostrowski, Vice Chair. Motion to accept the WMNR budget for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 as presented.
We have a
Steve
second?
Kirk, second.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. John?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
And myself, aye. And Kurt, again, thank you very much. It's always been a pleasure working with you guys. You guys do a great job over there, and I know the town likes working with you, and the accounting's always been great, so we appreciate everything you do over there, and keep up the good work. We'll see you next year.
See you next year. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kurt.
All right, next item is proposed motion to transfer $6,500 from an assessor's consulting expense to the revaluation appropriation. Ron, you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, so included in your packet is an email I received from the assessor, Justin Feldman. He was, he was looking to transfer $6,500 from his operating budget to the reval. Just to let me back up. As you know, we budget every year an appropriation for the reval. The reval's done every 5 years, but not only do we pay for the reval out of that, but we also will pay for court cases out of that. Anything that any fallout as a result of the reval. So he wasn't using his consulting line, so he felt it would be appropriate, and I agree, to transfer his available budget to the reval appropriation in the capital reserve, where it won't lapse.
Correct. Okay. And it looks like from his notes, he's got 20 cases stemming from the reval, so I'm sure he's going to spend it wisely there.
Yes, and again, Mike, it doesn't lapse. So if it doesn't get used through this process, right, it'll just carry to the next
level. Okay, perfect. All right, somebody want to make a motion?
Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance. I'll make a motion to transfer $6,500 from the assessor's consulting expense to the revaluation appropriation.
Do you have a second?
John Ostrowski,
Rebecca O'Donnell, second.
Oh.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, any further discussion on this?
Just a question, Ron, the 20 cases that are being referenced, is that normal or is that above normal?
Steve, based on, I'd have to ask the assessor and get back to you. But it varies from reval to reval, and we could get more cases as a result of this reval next year. So
Right.
It's not.
I don't think it's an excessive amount from what I remember in the last.
Yeah, I don't think it's excessive, but I couldn't say exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I have no experience, so I just wondered. Okay.
Yeah, I think what typically happens, Steve, is when, this was not a huge reval, there wasn't a huge amount of movement, so I don't think you get a huge amount of cases. Back a few years ago, we used to get, when we had bigger jumps, I think it's when you tend to get bigger pushback. So I think, 20 out of the whole town doesn't seem like a lot to go to court, and most of them get settled pretty quickly. Anybody, any other discussion? All right. Hearing none, let's do this. Ron, John?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Beautiful. Thank you very much. All right. In our packet, there is the presentation from the auditors. That's in there from last year. This is also the CAFR. Ron reminded me is available online if anybody wants to really dive into depth on this. The main thing I want to go through. There's a letter in there, which is the communication with those charged with governance, which is us. But I do want to go through and at least talk quickly through the auditor's recommendation to management, because those are the changes that are recommended, and I want to make sure that we're either addressing them or have plans to address them. So I will let Ron go through those, and then we can talk through them.
So there are three items in your packet from the auditors. The first is the presentation, which I don't know if you recall, we were gonna have them come and speak to you. That with the whole COVID thing happening, it was kind of hard to get.
Distracted, yeah.
Board of Finance, Board of Ed, and the auditors together. So they typically prepare a presentation for us. What I asked them to do was maybe prepare it in a little more detail and provide it to us so I can put it in the packet in place of them coming to the meeting. They're always available to be contacted if anyone's got questions they want to direct right to them. If not, you can certainly go through myself or Heidi to contact them with anything. But the presentation is pretty self-explanatory. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to review it or has any questions on it. It tries to give a synopsis of the CAFR itself and the financial position of the town and the pension funds. So
yeah, and I found it to be pretty straightforward, but also pretty old news, because obviously the world took a relatively dramatic change since these numbers were put together. So that's why I didn't see a lot of point in spending a lot of time talking about numbers that were from almost a year ago and now certainly dated at best. But again, if somebody wants to dive into specifics, we can certainly do that. But I'm most concerned with the recommendations.
Mike, this is Steve. I am too, but Ron, I did have just a couple of questions. They're general questions. There's a table, the fund balance and credit ratings. Is there some reason behind which towns were picked as comparisons to us? And I guess it's more than just on that page, but there's a couple of pages where other towns are listed. And I'm wondering, just in general, are those towns picked for some particular reason, or are they just sort of examples?
Just so I'm assuming you're referring to page 7 in their presentation, Steve?
Yes, that's the main one, yes.
I don't think there's any reason. I think it was just it looks like a sprinkling of Fairfield County towns, though. I mean, Greenwich,
right,
West,
kind of from low to high, exactly.
Yeah, and it just to kind of show, it looked like we were falling in the middle of those towns. I think you've got a pretty good representation of various towns throughout Fairfield County there. And,
yeah,
well,
I mean, I saw
and
that.
I didn't speak to them on that, but those are all AAA rated towns, and I think to their point, we're falling right in the middle of all the AAA rated towns.
Right, and we're not there yet.
Like a Trumbull might not be AAA, which is why somebody that we tend to
that
compare
would be
ourselves to.
yes.
Okay, hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah, in AAA, AA plus, these are towns from different rating agencies, but they're all the similar relative scale. So okay, got it. Thanks.
So anyway, before we leave the presentation, if you go to page 22, that kind of gives you a synopsis of no uncorrected misstatements, no material audit adjustments, and that they're independent. So those are the important things to take away from that at this point.
Right.
Mike, I apologize. Did you want to speak to the auditor's communications with those
Sure.
charts?
I mean, I'll go through them. Yeah, let me do that. So basically, let's just hit them quickly. So the first thing they called out is on purchasing and accounts payable. The condition one, currently the town does not have a formal process for the approval of new vendors. Two, all finance department personnel have the ability to enter new vendors into the financial software. So their recommendation is new vendors should be added only after proper due diligence has been performed and all required information and forms have been obtained by someone other than the accounts payable clerks. Although the vendor listing is reviewed at the year end and warrant reconciliations are performed by the finance director or deputy finance director, the accounts payable clerk and other finance department personnel should be restricted from having the ability to enter new vendors into the system. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple accounting controls. I understand that, you know, we are a fairly light staff, so typically those things do get not separated as much as they probably should be, but I'm sure we can come up with a process to make it so, you know, either Ken signs off on a new vendor or you guys signed off on a new vendor before it's put in the system. I think they just don't want, obviously, somebody being able to put in a new vendor and then write the check.
Yeah, and there's, you know, we may even look into an alternate procedure, just reviewing, you know, running an audit of the new vendors added on a weekly or monthly basis. Just
monthly basis, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can work on a control for that going forward. That's great. So the second one is permanent funds and other donation. Condition is the town maintains the Cornelia Rogers Fund, a permanent fund, as well as two other restricted donations, one for the senior center, one for Parks and Rec. Cornelia Rogers Fund does not have its own cash or investment account and no interest income is allocated to that fund. Two other restricted donations have their own bank accounts, but they do not earn interest. Recommendation, we recommend that investment income be properly allocated to the Cornelia Rogers Fund based on the average interfund balance of the fund on a monthly basis. We also recommend the two restricted donations be moved to interest-bearing accounts. Fair enough. I mean, certainly, yeah. I don't think it's material at this point, but we can certainly, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll discuss those with the town treasurer.
Town treasurer, right, exactly. Certainly not something that's a big concern, but good to call out. So the other ones are on the education side. So the first one is the cafeteria revenue and cash receipts. The condition, currently deposits received online from parents are recorded as revenues based on monthly reports from the credit card processor. Cash and checks received directly by the cafeteria program are also recorded monthly based on deposit slips. Sales reports are not reconciled to the revenue recorded. Okay. We recommend the revenue should be recorded based on sales in the POS system. Deposits should be reconciled to the sales amounts. Prepayments received from parents should be recorded as unearned revenue until the funds are used by the students as part of daily sales. You want to speak to that, Ron?
Yeah, so I have not had a chance to address this yet on the board side. I'll be talking with staff internally, walking through the process that are in place now. It's just that with everything else going on, it has not been a priority.
Got it. Okay. Second one is on payroll. Condition is the payroll specialist is responsible for generating payroll as well as distributing payroll checks. This represents a lack of segregation of duties. Recommendation, we recommend that an employee other than the employee who processes payroll be responsible for distributing the payroll checks. Once they are signed, they should not be returned to the employees who processes payroll. Again, another simple accounting control. You don't want the possibility of somebody.
Yeah, I don't see this as a. Yeah, I don't see that. I have discussed this internally already, and I don't really see what the issue is there. I just.
I think the theory from an auditor standpoint is that, you know, if you could somehow manage to create an employee that doesn't exist and then, you know, take the checks yourself, then, you know, if there was another person involved, it would be harder to create that situation. So I think it's it's a reach a little bit here. I don't think this is a material issue, but, you know, an easy fix, I would think.
Yeah.
Have somebody else hand out the damn checks, you know?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that
by now, and I would hope by now that most of the payments we do are electronic deposits and not handing out checks anymore.
Well,
But
that's just it. It's not a, it's a very, very insignificant amount. And when she's handing them out, she's usually the one just putting them into the inter-office
mail
mail.
slots, right? Exactly. So I mean,
Yeah,
I wouldn't
so,
think that's a significant one either.
yeah. I'll
And
see if there's
all
a
right,
potential for a workaround there, but
perfect.
So Mike, can I
Uh,
ask a question, please?
Sure.
So when they give us one of these recommendations and we say, hey, maybe it's not a big deal or whatever, do we then get sign off from the auditors as to
Oh no, we
our
typically
solution,
address them. We
agreement?
just don't put as much significance on them. I mean, these will all
Okay.
be addressed.
they'll
But
have to
again,
be
to
addressed
me,
for next
they'll be
year.
addressed for next year, and that's all they want to see is that next year when they come in that we've made a change in the system. If you ignore their recommendations, then you will get a sterner letter the next year. But we typically don't get the same one year over year. But what I'm saying is that you will always get recommendations from the auditors. The ones we used to get, 10 or 12 years ago were serious ones. A couple of these are really, to me, like they need to find something to tell us to tighten up. And, the fact that, there's probably a dozen checks being handed out to somebody is probably not the biggest concern. But again, if it's a concern of the auditors, we're going to address it.
Okay.
The last section is the budget. Condition: the fiscal 2020 budget contains a $300,000 reduction to bring the Board of Ed budget to the approved amount. This does not allow for appropriate budget monitoring. A number in the fiscal 2019 budget contains cost overruns, including health insurance. We recommend that any budget reductions be applied to a specific budget items. Obviously, this was a big issue for certainly me and a few other people of not having a plug number. I believe we've made this pretty clear to the Board of Ed that we don't do plug numbers, and obviously the auditors feel the same way. So I think that's fairly moot point going forward.
I would agree, and I think
you would
everyone.
agree with that? Got that
believe
message?
everyone on the Board of Ed itself and the staff would agree. So.
Right. Okay. The second one is internal reporting for management and monthly reporting to the Board of Ed should be in sufficient detail and timely. The Board of Ed should receive and review a budget versus actual for the general fund monthly. The Board of Ed should receive and review balance sheet and operating statements for all funds managed by the Education Department at least semi-annually. These other funds include school cafeteria, education grants, education programs, Board of Ed pension, private purpose trusts, scholarship funds, custodial student activity funds. Following up on prior years, okay.
Yeah, so as far as I know, most, if not all of those are reported already, except with the exception of maybe the pension, which is reported to the pension committee for both the town and Board of Ed. So I'll circle back with the auditors on that one just to find out exactly what they were talking about. Because the Board of Ed gets a monthly fund statement that you guys also get. So.
Okay. And then the follow-up on prior years, the following comments and recommendation from the prior years are not being repeated since the town has rectified the situation or has otherwise been resolved. So again, this just means, like, to your point, Steve, these are the ones that were in last year's report and they've been cleared. So it was the internal services, revenue and expenses, and the Board of Ed budget transfers are approved by the Board of Ed.
So Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance. So Mike, I have a question for Ron. Ron, right after pre-COVID, right after you began working over on the Board of Ed, I was at a Board of Ed meeting where you brought up a point, and I don't remember all the details, but I think it was about warrants not being reviewed or something being reviewed by the same person, and I wish I could remember exactly what. I have to go back and try to find some notes, but you and I had a quick conversation that said it was something that had been reviewed by the prior superintendent. Do you remember that conversation and that issue? And if so, was anything changed?
Yeah, yes, it has. So what I found when I went over there, that warrants were not being reviewed in detail, and there was a lot of change internally over there over the past year, obviously. So I can't speak to what was happening in practice 12 months ago. But there's been I believe there was a policy change, and there's been, the practice internally. I can tell you, myself and the superintendent are both reviewing the warrants in pretty good detail.
Okay, because I think both you
After,
and I expressed surprise that that was something that hadn't been caught, and I just wanted to make sure it actually got resolved, so thank you.
it has, yes.
Awesome. All right. Anybody have anything else on the auditors before we move on? Excellent.
I
All
just
right.
want to say something, Mike.
Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. Yeah, John Oszewski, Vice Chair. I just want to show my appreciation to Ron and Heidi for all their hard work putting this all together. They hit it out of the park every year with, such minor issues that we have nothing to worry about with respect to the numbers. So thank you very much to both Ron and Heidi.
I think that's an excellent point. Appreciate that, because we take it for granted sometimes, because, it's been so good for so many years that, we just like, oh, it's an auditor's report, it will be fine. And a lot of towns, it is not like that. And it wasn't always like this. So, I go back enough to know that, there was some messy things going on. And now I think the Board of Ed side is getting tightened up dramatically. And I think we'll continue to see that. So I second that very strongly. All right, review of the monthly municipals. Is that the tax collector you got up there, Heidi? Deb, you still with us?
Hi, I'm here. Currently,
Wonderful.
as of today, I just wanted to give you an update. We're at collection rate at 98.7.
Okay.
Money's been coming in very slowly. I know the COVID and
Sure.
everything
Not a
else,
surprise.
so it has been slow. But we've made budget, so we'll be okay. We still have like another 2 weeks to go, and I already have a bunch of July payments, which we can't post yet because there's no bills on the system, waiting to be posted for July. So money is starting to come in for July, and we're gearing up for our July season.
Okay, any estimate of where you think we'll end up for in June 30th?
Oh gosh, right now we're ahead about 300,000. But we're falling behind on the back because we couldn't do anything for collections and, do anything with that. So in the back, with the interest, I'm ahead 22,000 for the current, and I'm behind 21,000 for the back. So that pretty well is a wash for that. And the prior years, I'm 166,000 back off. So my figures are currently, as of today, is $145,000 over what we budgeted.
Okay.
So I'm don't know what I'm going to be getting in. Like I said, money has been coming in dribs and drabs, but we are to currently, as of today, we're 145,000 over what we budgeted.
Okay. Very good. Anybody have any other questions? All right. I know the treasurer did a mail-in. He had a prior commitment. So I know he emailed it. I think, Heidi, you shared that with everybody, right? I know I'll be remiss without him reminding us that finance rates are going down. So again, this was a note. He's having fun with his daughter, so that's much more important. So I think we did a good job lowering the interest anticipation for next year. So not a surprise there.
And when
Anybody
are the
have
tax
any
bills
more?
when are the tax bills going out?
Deb, you still with us, or we lose her?
still here. What's the question?
When are the tax bills going out?
They're being mailed on June 29th, and we can't collect until July 1st because the auditors don't allow us to collect till July 1st. So they're going out on June 29th in the mail.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. All right. Last on the list is monthlies for Board of Ed, general funds, special revenue funds. I'll be honest, I didn't dive deep into this. I don't know if anybody else has any other
Mike, did
questions
you
on
miss
that or
the I think you missed the municipal financial reports first.
We started there, but we didn't really touch on it. Yeah, I read that, but Heidi brought up the tax collector and jumped ahead on me. So we can certainly talk on that side. I'm easily distracted, apparently. So anybody have anything on the municipal side first?
No.
Anybody have any questions, concerns on the Board of Ed side? And Ron, you got anything you want to add on this, either one? You want to bring to our attention?
Well, I'm projecting the deficit to year end. I have not reported it to the Board of Ed yet. Myself and the superintendent need to review it tomorrow. So,
so you're going to give us a sneak peek?
I can give you a range. How does that sound? And again, it's
perfect.
It's a conservative range. There's a lot of POs have been closed. The teacher's balloon payment happened a week ago, so that's behind us. There's still some things to be sifted out going into year end, though. My ballpark right now is between 300,000 and 400,000.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's certainly a vast improvement to where we were 4 or 5 months ago. So. Yeah,
and I'll be honest, I'd like to, if we can tighten it up, maybe we can discuss the making the ADEC if that's a possibility. I know that's something.
You know my feelings on that, so that's certainly something we're going to talk about. Especially depending on where Deb comes in, and we're going to look at all those alternatives. But
right,
we did it once. I'm certainly not in love with doing it again, but I'm certainly we're going to look at it for sure. Okay. Anybody have anything else we want to touch on? At this, we're under an hour. It's getting good.
Hey, Mike, it's Rebecca.
Yes, Rebecca.
What did you just say though? An egg? What is that? Can you just? I didn't hear that well.
Yes, an egg. Yeah, no, ADEC, actuarially determined employer contribution for the pension plan.
Oh, okay.
I used to like the previous acronym, which was the ARC. So I still use the ARC because I'm an old guy. I don't like ADEC.
Okay.
All right. We'll change it again in a few years, Mike. It'll probably go back to ARC or something.
Oh, I hope so.
Okay.
I like ARC much better. So yes, so basically it's the pension payment that we're supposed to make to cover, our long-term expenses. Last year the Board of Ed was unable to make it, and we made it subsequently on their behalf. They again have not made it this year due to the deficit, but again, we will at year end look at all the payments and make a decision whether it makes sense for us to do that or not.
Okay,
What is that payment value?
It's right around 350,000.
300, yeah, 350, yeah. So it's not an insignificant amount of money, but again, especially with the rate environment and the difficulty, I think, of getting returns on the next year or two, I think it's something that would make sense. So I'm certainly open to looking at it. Okay.
All right. Thank
Anybody
you.
got anything else? No, that's good. Ron and his eggs. All right. Anybody, if nothing else, somebody want to make another motion?
Come on, somebody besides me. All right, Steve Kirk, motion to adjourn.
Wonderful. All right, guys. I'll have a wonderful weekend, and happy Father's Day to everybody.